Hey VC, vinyl community, it's Gary again. Not that you wanted me back this soon, but I'm here. Thanks to unemployment, you're going to get more of me than you want. Um, Thanks to the positive feedback I got from my first video with the theme of iconic albums or personal iconic albums, which are recordings that mean the most to me throughout my life that I have personal connections with and a very long and strong personal history with. I'm going to continue in that mode. And I was almost hesitant to do this one because this album means so much to me and there's so many details. I could probably speak about this album and what it's meant to me for an hour, and I'm going to try not to. So let me start by saying that about a year or so after I graduated high school, I got a full-time job. And the single biggest benefit of having a full-time job was it was an income, which wasn't much money, but enabled me to buy albums. Albums were the one thing that, more than anything else, excited me to purchase. I didn't care about having a new car, never did. Cars weren't the thing, clothes weren't the thing. But having enough money to go buy an album or two or three every week was like a major big deal to me. It still is to this day, actually. So I started this kind of routine on Friday when my work week was done. Wasn't a great job, but was a job nonetheless, full-time, Monday through Friday thing. On Fridays, instead of going home for dinner like I would every other day of the week, I would drive about 10 miles. There were two malls that were nearby, both of which had several different record shops. Those record shops were all numerous things like Sam Goody, which probably I think was throughout the whole country until recently. But there was also another one that may have been just on the East Coast called Harmony Hut. There was a few here in New Jersey. I don't know how far out of New Jersey they got, but they were a big chain here locally in this area. And they had a great import section. And I was at the point where I was just kind of getting out of, well, or say trying to expand on the whole prog rock thing that was going on in the 70s. I had long ago learned to listen to extended instrumental passages and pretty much ran out of stuff to listen to, or couldn't find things that were really just continuing in that direction. And a lot of those bands, certainly the American ones, if not the European ones, started holding back a little bit and going in a slightly more commercial direction, I guess, at the insistence of perhaps their record companies or sagging sales or the fact that, at that time disco was coming out. And so this new thing hit the radio. And it was really pushing the more obscure rock bands even further back in the public view, and people were losing contracts right and left or whatever. So there wasn't a lot of stuff out there, and so I started getting adventurous and looking for things that were not progressive rock, that were all instrumental, that were the new age genre didn't exist. There's some people around like Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze that I was just discovering at that time, but there were plenty of other folks. And without the internet, and there was a couple music magazines out there that would occasionally write about some of these more obscure artists, but not give you a whole lot of information on them. So you just have to kind of remember the name and look for the albums. So I was looking for something instrumental, something keyboard-based, hopefully. I'm a sucker to this day for what I call the real solo album, and that is when a single musician goes in and doesn't necessarily play live like a piano solo album or a classical guitar solo album, but rather somebody who goes in and plays multiple instruments and overdubs all the parts themselves. Those are my favorite albums to this day. And back in this time period is when I really started developing a taste for it. So I was also looking for that. I came across this album by somebody I'd never heard of before, believe it or not. And I picked it up on a total blind buy. Terry Riley. This is a movie soundtrack, no less, to a movie by somebody named Alexander Whitelaw, who's a director who only made 4 films and who I just learned passed away on February 20th of this year, 2015. So he just passed away a matter of weeks ago. Lifespan was, I guess, kind of the Americanized title. The movie never came out in America, though, even though it was filmed in English. The only thing I knew about the album, I didn't know Terry Riley. I recognized Klaus Kinski, the actor. Hardly enough to make you buy an album, certainly. Just being a still for the movie. The picture on the back of the album, though, is really the thing that sold me on the album. There's Terry sitting at a dual keyboard organ, and it just sitting there, kind of looking happy, and I'm like, oh, I think this is going to be something I like. Little did I know, this could be my favorite album of all time. Got home, put it on. There's not a lot of information. There's no recording dates here. However, it looks like from a reissue that came out later that it was recorded in 74, even though the movie didn't come out till late 76 overseas. Movie was filmed in Holland, the Netherlands, which is where all the action takes place, Holland, the Netherlands, and Amsterdam, which is where the story takes place. Very interesting. Eventually, many years later, I got to see the movie. But I put the soundtrack on. Oh my God! It's nothing. This could be Terry Riley at his most accessible. Terry's probably best known for the piece In C, which has been recorded numerous times by Terry and other ensembles, and that's it's not a difficult piece to get into in C, so I can see why people gravitate toward it. This is just Terry solo at the keyboards. Usually, when people tell me something is an accessible album by an artist, I cringe a little bit because I think maybe an artist is dumbing down their work in order to make it more palatable for folks. But that's not the case. This was written for a soundtrack, so Terry didn't maybe go hog wild on it in terms of trying to make something experimental or avant-garde. It's pretty. It's beautiful. I've never in my life heard better sounds out of a single electric organ. In terms of Terry's ear is incredible. Almost every track of this album uses the organ, but it uses different settings on the organ. And I'm guessing this is one of those organs with those, what do they call them, the pull bars, where you can alter the tone and the percussive effect of each individual note you play, and Terry does it all here. He uses some very soft, sustained sounds. He uses some very percussive sounds. It's beautiful music, and my only, I'll say complaint is it's 30 minutes long, and that's it. In addition, there is a little bit of voice that Terry uses to great effect in the background of one or two of the tracks. There's some saxophone playing, which Terry does, soprano saxophone playing, which is very pretty. Also, a little bit more in the background, very sparse. And there's some tabla drums. And that's the only thing that I'm not 100% sure whether or not Terry played, because I know Terry studied Indian music a lot. I don't know offhand. I don't recall him playing tabla drums. And on the track where the tablas figure, I believe it's only one track, Terry would have had to have recorded the tablas and then recorded the organ parts over it through overdubbing. So I'm not sure whether or not there's a guest playing tablas on that one track or not. But I'm trying to find out. When this was eventually reissued on CD, it also didn't include that information. But anyway, this was my first Terry Riley. I knew nothing about him. It's on a French label. It's an import. The record, even though the movie looked like it was filmed in around 74. Movie came out in 76. The album came out in 78, which is the year I bought it. And it's on this obscure label, Stip. It looks like S-T-I-P. I don't have anything nor have ever heard of this label before. So it looks like I bought it as a new release, at least in the import bins, because I'll tell you, over all the years, I love this album so much, I continue to look for it when I would go record shopping, and I would look at other Terry Riley things. or other soundtrack things or imports or whatever, I continued to look for it, and I never saw another copy on vinyl pop up ever. Many, many years later, I wore that vinyl out. And the funny thing is, I wore it out just by making cassette copies of it so I wouldn't wear the vinyl out. I re-recorded that album onto cassette so many times over the years just so I would have it not wear the vinyl down. And, you know, I would misplace the cassette or lose it, or had one copy in my car, and, you know, just so I could always hear it and wouldn't have to worry about flipping the sides over, so I get the whole 30-minute experience in one shot. But when I finally got, many years later, into the computer age, that was the first album that I attempted and figured out how to record a vinyl album into your computer and burn a CDR from it. So that kind of overrode the need to have cassettes or to wear out the album any further. Now, over the years, as a result of this album, I bought many more. These aren't even all my Terry Riley albums. But here's another one, and this damn thing stayed in good condition over the years. Persian Surgery Dervishes. Look at that purple and blue cover. Isn't that awesome? That's a 2-record set. I won't say to me it's anywhere near lifespan in terms of my love for it. I love this album, but you know, nothing is going to beat lifespan for me. This Persian Surgery Dervishes looks like to be it's a live album, a live performance from 1971 on one album and 1972 on the other. Strictly Terry on organ, which he was notorious for doing these incredibly long live concerts that went on for many hours into the late evening hours, just on solo organ. And he created, probably the first person to use it, certainly the first person to use it live, a digital delay system, which is sampling now, but did it live. I don't know how, possibly by using a reel-to-reel recorder. I'm not sure how he did it, where he would play a phrase on the organ and somehow live loop that phrase and then play over it. So there was a very thick thing going on. He also did it with the saxophone too. He's got some pieces where he recorded, though I think he probably did that mainly in the studio with the saxophone, but he recorded multiple saxophone parts, and he created this digital delay thing. And it's on the Lifespan album as well, which is the first time I ever heard any kind of looping, live or otherwise. And you could tell that it was kind of looped in a way. I had a feeling that he wasn't replaying that manually, those parts. And if you ever hear it, you'll kind of know what I mean. But it's such excellent use of it. It's incredible. And how he came up with this whole system would mark him a genius just for that alone. So I continued to buy these Descending Moonshine Dervishes. Try remembering that title. So I continued to buy Terry albums, which I love. This was another concert album, single album from 1975. Terry again on organ. These are my favorite recordings, Terry on organ, except he doesn't really do much of them anymore. He's gone to piano. A few years he was playing around with synthesizers, which is fine. There's just something about Terry and an organ, especially on that Lifespan soundtrack, where he's just so good with the selection of the different sounds that an organ can get. It's just amazing. But for many years, he's played piano. Another album, this is about from 75 too. This was very easy to get because this is released on Columbia, I think it is. Columbia Masterworks, I believe. Yeah, CBS Records, blah, 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 yeah. 1980, this came out, that was recorded a little bit earlier, possibly 79. This is a studio recording. He's got a lot of live recordings. But Shri Camel, which is an interesting album. This uses just intonation system. So the just intonation stuff is harder to get into. This is probably the easiest one I've ever heard of album of just intonation. Maybe it's because it's the organ and it's a softer sound. Most just intonation recordings are done on the piano, and Terry's done them on piano as well. Just intonation is a different tuning system than we're used to hearing. And when you first hear it, especially on piano, it sounds like somebody's playing an out-of-tune piano. Because I guess, I don't know how to explain this. I don't even know if I understand it. Each note has a certain cycle that it exists at, sound frequency. And the sound frequencies on our standard scales that we're used to hearing are not equal distance apart. Some are closer than others. I think the just intonation system has each individual note exactly the same cycle distance apart from each other, which means that there's more than 7 notes in the scale. So you know, it's this. It actually sounds like the keyboard's out of tune when you first hear it. But once you understand that's what it is, and you know it's going to sound weird, and you listen to it for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, it depends on your ears, you begin to get into it. But Terry's recorded a bunch of albums like that, on piano and on organ as well. And that Shri Camel that I just showed, probably the easiest one to get into there. Now, about 2007, on the internet, I found an album of Terry's that I never knew existed. Another soundtrack to another French movie that probably never got released here. I can't, you know, I was going to try to pronounce the French name, but I would just embarrass myself. So thankfully, they retitled it in English, Happy Ending. La Euphemise, something like that. Another soundtrack album from around that same period as the Lifespan album, which, you know, anything near Lifespan is like a grail to me. I didn't know this album existed until the internet age, and in 2007 I found somebody selling a copy that they said was mint. And in my whole life, actually, I'm not really a vinyl collector, but this wasn't available anyplace else. In 2007, I bought this, and this is maybe one of maybe 5 albums that I've ever bought used. I have, like I said, maybe 5 albums over the years that I bought used just because they weren't available in any other format, were very rare. This is another movie soundtrack. Terry, same thing, you know, he uses organ. He uses a lot of saxophone on this one as well. This just has 2 long pieces. Each piece is 18.5 minutes. And when I found this, it's not up to Lifespan's standards. I shouldn't say that. I don't like it as much as Lifespan, but I don't like anything as much as I like Lifespan. But it's a good listen. Now, when I found this, because of the short running length of this album and the short running length of Lifespan, I very quickly copied the Happy Endings album into my computer and also burned that onto a CDR disc. And both albums fit onto one CDR, because a compact disc can typically hold like about 80 minutes of music, and both of those albums aren't anywhere near that. And I was happy with that, but I continued to look for these albums to be re-released on CD, probably more than just about any other album. Excuse the light that's flashing, guys. I left my TV on, and it's against the far wall, and hopefully it's not too distracting. So I continued to look for these albums to be released on CD, especially Lifespan. Didn't happen, and I got to the point where I thought, wow, why aren't they ever going to release these albums? And both of them were on an obscure French label, so maybe that's why, who knows. Then all of a sudden, in early 2008, voila, the Holy Grail. Not only did they re-release Lifespan album with a new different cover, but they did exactly the same thing I did. They also re-released the Happy Endings album and stuck them on the same CD. Because like I said, Lifespan is only 30 minutes long. It's a very short album. The Happy Endings is 36 minutes long, also a short album. But that doesn't mean that the record companies are going to be generous and necessarily stick them both on the same album just because we can. They didn't reproduce the covers, which are no real big deal. They did reproduce that wonderful picture in the back of Lifespan of Terry sitting, looking quite happy behind his organ. That was in the original back of the album. And that's the thing that made me buy the album in the first place. When I saw that Terry sitting at the keyboard there, I said, oh, that's very cool. Though they did, on the label, which I cut out, this little stamp here, which showed you the covers of both albums, interestingly. And of course, I had to cut that out and save that. So there's the covers from the little CD booklet package. Man, and this album is readily available now on CD. It sounds great. I wore out my vinyl. This came out in 2008. It's still very much in print. It actually, I believe, I could be wrong. It's out of a label in California, ElysianFields.com, but I bought it off of Amazon or one of those places. It's available everywhere. That could be, Terry's got his own label, and I think that may be it. I'm not sure. So it could be that Terry re-released these himself, which is great because most of the time musicians cannot get the rights to their own recordings to re-release them. Man, if you've ever heard anything by Terry Riley that you've liked, if you're into minimalist music, I guess, you really do owe it to yourself to get that album. I highly recommend it. A few of the reissues, Persian Surgery Dervishes, which I bought naturally on CD when it came out. The Shri Camel, which I also bought on CD when it came out. Some of these are imports, some of these are easier to get. Here's one. I couldn't find my vinyl. I have this on vinyl too. Another 2-record set, The Harp of New Albion, which is Terry Riley, 2-album set, runs about an hour and 50 minutes of just Terry on piano doing that just intonation thing, which, is a little difficult when you first hear it. It's not avant-garde. He's not banging on the piano. He's actually playing tuneful things. But each key, I forget how many notes are in each key. It's not 7 like we're used to. So it's a little tougher going. And Terry's released in recent years himself a lot of his old music, concert recordings, and stuff like that. Here's No Man's Land. Here's another, and this is good. This is another one, easy to get into. No Man's Land, Carm. Carm, I believe, showed this recently. Yeah, Carm showed this recently. This is an early edition, same version that Carm had. This is with Terry playing synthesizers, piano, and vocals. This is from November '84, so it's more recent. And it's got Krishna Bhatt, B-H-A-T-T, playing sitar and tabla on there. Pretty easy album to get into. Again, it's not the just intonation stuff. It's a movie I know nothing about, a soundtrack. And Terry has since re-released this album himself and put some additional music on there. And I kind of wish I had that version just for the additional music. Because this was the original issue of that album. And, Elysian Fields must be Terry's label because here's another Terry thing. This is an archive recording called The Last Camel in Paris, which are live recordings from November of 1978. And I believe it was Terry playing most of the material live from that earlier Shri Camel album, which came out a year or two before this concert. So it's probably that just intonation stuff, a little harder to get into, but fantastic. Nice package. Nice digipack that he did here. Terry, Terry should be one of those guys that even people that don't like this kind of music know, like people know maybe like a Miles Davis or John Coltrane or Charlie Parker that aren't even into jazz. This guy, he's an American icon as far as I'm concerned, an absolute genius. Should be at least as well known as Philip Glass, and I love Philip Glass and Steve Reich. But they're better known, they're all over PBS, these guys. Some more recent stuff, just to show it. Couple albums Terry recorded with a guy whose name I can't pronounce, who's an upright bassist, but I'm going to try. Stefano Skandab. I even worked on this, so you never know it. Scodanabo. Scodanabo? Scodanabio, or whatever. He did 2 albums with this guy in the 90s. An upright bass player. Mixed with Terry playing a synthesizer. So synthesizer and double bass, I love that combo anyway. I still wish Terry would go back and play some organ, but, I don't know if we're going to get any more of that. And Terry's continued. Terry's still very active. I mean, he was an educator, and I know associated for years with universities in California. And if I lived anywhere near where this man was teaching, I would do anything to take his courses. I don't give a damn whether I got credit for them or not, just to be in his presence. For me, he's one of those guys. He could start a cult, I'd probably be member number 1. Atlantis Nath is more recent. He's doing concept albums now, and his son is a guitarist, and from what I recall, pretty damn good one. The Book of Abizode. I should really try to learn how to pronounce these before. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The music's fantastic. A little difficult to get into, maybe. So there's Terry, smiling Terry. I love Terry. I love Terry with it. He's got the guru beard thing going on, which is perfect for his music. Just wonderful. I think that's his son in the picture too. It doesn't even say here. But he's continuing to do things, and honestly, these recent albums, they're way above my head. I mean, they're these things that I'm going to continue to listen to, and I'm going to continue to try to grasp. And I like the fact that artists do things over my head. That's what I want them to do. I don't want them to, I found a sound, let me stick with it and just record 50 albums until I drop dead of doing the same thing. A lot of Terry stuff is hard for me to get into, but I appreciate it, and I love the fact that he is sticking to his guns. He's got a vision. Maybe his vision changes over time, or at least how he presents it to the world in his music. But this is a guy worth following, even if you don't get into this stuff. It's a kind of thing that, wow, I can't get into that now, but who knows what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years? Because Terry's way far ahead of us guys. So we're playing catch up. It's Terry's world, and we're playing catch up. Okay, geez, at least I'm sticking to one artist and primarily one album here in this series, in an attempt to keep it under a half hour, which I just barely did this time. Guys, thanks for watching. I'm going to continue with this series. Thanks for the kind comments. I've never met a nicer bunch of people, and that's pretty rare on the internet these days, as you can imagine. Nicer things to say, and the mutual love and respect that everybody's offering up here is just wonderful. I'll be back probably much sooner than you want to see me, with more, and hopefully this comes out okay, because I really wanted to do this one for my love of Terry. Okay, guys, I'll be talking to you soon.